name is Cynthia Howell, and Mrs. Birdsong, my principal, asked me to speak from my heart about my 46-year journey in education. And I found it kind of challenging to condense 46 years into just a few minutes. So please bear with me. I want to start by saying this. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plan that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plan to give you a hope and a future." There's also another scripture that I want to refer to, Jeremiah 1:5. It says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." My husband would sometimes say that the Lord definitely had a sense of humor because some of life's journeys are not on our radar. There have been times that I've agreed with him in that statement because, let me make it very clear, teaching was never on my radar. Being the daughter of an elementary teacher revealed very early in my childhood that I did not want to become a teacher. At the end of each school day, when my friends would leave school, my brother and I had to stay at school what seemed to have been hours while my mother prepared for the next day. She would then wag tons of papers home to grade. And when I got old enough, I remember her even tasking me with a job on Saturdays to grade the spelling test. Of course, I did it because back then you did what you were told to do. But I was convinced even more at that point that I'm just not going to be doing this job. We would even later go places and she had the audacity to drag papers with her in the car. I remember thinking, those papers sure are getting a lot of my mother's time. I was born in Hartselle, Alabama. My brother and I were raised by our parents, Marion and Colleen Hayden. My mother, Colleen Hayden, taught 4th grade at Miller Elementary School, where I attended grades 1 through 6. My class was the last graduating class from Miller due to the end of segregation. Our beloved school doors would be closed that next year. Therefore, students and teachers were assigned to other schools. My mother was assigned to Julian Newman in 1969 as a 4th grade teacher. Thus, this began my journey with Julian Newman. I remember Mother saying how welcoming her co-workers were and how helpful her principal, Mr. Sexton, and Mrs. Marjorie Walker, and Mrs. Ann Gordon, and Mrs. Nancy Filippelli were in helping her with this transition. Years later, I graduated from Athens High School and I enrolled in Alabama A&M University with the intent of entering into the medical fields to become a nurse. The first year classes were very basic, so I did not have to declare a major. But then my sophomore year came, and this is where I literally lost my mind. I have absolutely no recollection of how I got myself entered into the education department. Remember, this was never on my radar. But Jeremiah declared that before I was formed in my mother's womb, Yahweh God, He had a plan for my very being. So all I can say is that when it was time for me to declare that major, I accept the fact that I lost my mind and miraculously took on His mind. A few years later, my senior year came at Alabama A&M, and it was time for me to do my student teaching. And I requested an assignment in Athens, and how about I got assigned to Mrs. Gwen Bacon's kindergarten class at Julian Newman. After graduating with honors, I got married and I moved to Kentucky to begin my career as a teacher. Unfortunately, my experience there was less than desirable. Little did I know the school system there was under a mandate to hire minorities. My principal and direct coworkers did everything they could to set me up for failure. They felt that I only got the job simply because I was black. With no family there other than my husband, I felt like I was going to crumble at any point. I wanted to quit. However, that was the beginning of my husband becoming my biggest cheerleader. After I would give him all the reasons why I just wasn't going to go back, he'd remind me with the question, "But who called you? For I know the plans I have for you, declared the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future." This was Yahweh, God's plan to prosper me, to have a hope and a future. I was confused, and so I'm like, okay, I can pass on this plan because I'm miserable, God. There were about 8 other minorities that were hired that year, and at the end of the year, we were all terminated. However, before I got my termination letter, I had already decided that I was not going to leave my husband, but I was going to leave Kentucky and come back to Alabama. After an investigation that summer, it was ruled that all of us had been racially discriminated against and our jobs were restored. I did not accept the position, so thus my journey was about to continue at the very place my mother was assigned at the closure of our beloved Miller Elementary School. In 1982, I was like our latest hire, Miss Katie Lewis. Julian Newman's enrollment had increased for another kindergarten unit, and I was going to be that 3rd unit that was needed. Mrs. Nancy Cutts gave me, a young 24-year-old, the opportunity to become that 3rd kindergarten teacher. While I was excited to get the job, but because of my experience in Kentucky, I thought nobody would hire me. But this job appointment came with an unspoken mentor, my mother. This lasted for about 14 years until she retired. My mother's presence helped me to restore the confidence that the teachers and staff at Alabama A&M had prepared me to execute. She embedded the importance of being a team player. She also taught me the etiquette of our profession, the importance of treating each child as a unique individual with unlimited potential, no matter their background. And the list goes on and on. Although Mrs. Charlotte Carter and I were the babies on the staff, I felt like I was wanted there, that I was a part of that staff, simply by the way they welcomed me. In addition to Mrs. Cutts, I will be forever grateful for the genuine love displayed by the seasoned teachers there, like Mrs. Marjorie Walker, Mrs. Ann Gordon, Mrs. Clara Kane, Mrs. Julia Hatchett, Mrs. Peggy Belcher, Mrs. Gwen McClure, Mrs. Margaret Pittman, Mrs. Janet Wagner, Mrs. Shirley Woods, and many others. After a total of 38 years of teaching, in 1996, my mother retired, and I was now left on my own to take wings and soar. I had built a healthy working relationship with my coworkers, and I had discovered that I did not have to take those papers home to grade. Instead, I stayed and I worked after school, but no papers came home with me. I watched my son and daughter blossom as they attended Julian Newman Elementary, which meant, like me, they had to stay after school while I prepared for the next day. And let me note it here that my daughter, Synthia, is our 3rd generation educator in her 24th year, currently serving as principal at a middle school in South Florida. So as of today, Synthia, my mother, and I are proud of our combined 108 years of service as educators. As the years went by, I realized that many coworkers were sharing conversations with me that were very private, and sometimes they just needed a listening ear. During this journey, my biggest cheerleader, my husband, went to sleep. The one that I depended on to help me, to help others. The one that just never let me quit was no longer here. After he was no longer here to be my coach, I found myself having more conversations with God, asking him why others were gravitating to me when I really didn't have much to give. At some point, I realized that his plan for me involved encouraging my coworkers, basically to remember their why. Why do you come here every day? Why do you take children home on your heart? Why do you find the necessity to buy for that child or their family? And why do you shed tears because you just don't know about the circumstances some of your children are about to go home and face? The whys. The whys. As my daughter says, every single day there is at least one person waiting for you to show up. Therefore, let me encourage all of you with this thought. Quitting isn't an option until the plan for your life has been completed. So today, I understand why I was chosen to drink from that bitter cup in Kentucky. That bitter cup is the cup that reminds me today that my future was past Kentucky. That cup reminds me to display to my coworkers that you do matter, and that you are seen, and that your voice is heard, and kindness wins every time. I've been in good health. I've prospered in many ways because I have yielded to his plan. Though there have been my highs and the lows, the ups and the downs, I am grateful for the 44-year journey at Julian Newman Elementary, to have had the opportunity to be a reflection of him that allows others to be better simply because our paths crossed. So basically, what am I saying? His blueprint, his plan included many stages in my life, from the teacher being the teacher's child, to the college intern, to being parents of my very own children that were students at Julian Newman, and now to the teacher at Julian Newman. I was then and continue to be greeted and receive the warmth during each one of those stages. Now that's the atmosphere I perceive that we have here at Julian Newman. Whether you are part of our staff, whether you are a parent, or what other role you may play, I sure do hope you have gleaned that same warmth and acceptance. Finally, if my name, Synthia Howell, happens to come up in your conversations, or even after I am released from this assignment because I completed the plan, simply remember these words: I cared and I tried to get it right. Thank you. I had a former student post something on Facebook, and she started out saying that I taught her 14 years ago. And she said she didn't really remember anything specifically academically that I taught her, but she remembered how I made her feel, how I made her challenge herself, how I made her understand her worth, and it has helped to develop her to the person she is today. I want to feel and believe that teachers are going to do their job academically. They're going to do their best to teach the academics. And she's so right. Once you pass that grade or that teacher, They're not going to remember the academic part. They're going to remember, did you care about them? Did you make them feel wanted? Those are the things that I want to be remembered by.